The early lead contender for AI Theme of the Year 2025 might be Vibecoding. Buoyed by tools like Bolt and Lovable and SoftGen and agentic IDEs like Cursor and Windsurf, more people than ever are actually putting code out into the world thanks to AI. The so-called Vibecoding movement, a term coined by Andrej Karpathy, has taken root among solopreneurs and builders of all stripes, and one of the loudest proponents and most interesting builders in this space is Riley Brown. Riley was and is the biggest AI TikToker, but his ambition has always been far beyond content and is about creation more broadly. He's just released a new app called Vibecoding, which is an app that builds apps, and today we're going to talk about his journey as well as what he thinks the future of Vibecoding really is. All right, Riley, the Vibecoder's Vibecoder. Welcome to the AI Daily Brief. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I've been Vibecoding.
I love it. I'm super excited for this conversation. I've been following you forever. Obviously, you were doing content in the AI space for a lot longer than you've been doing this. But I've watched sort of every step of this transition. Love it. Have been dabbling with this myself on the side. Obviously, spend a lot of time thinking about the weird perspective on Vibecoding I have is thinking about how it's going to end up translating into the enterprise, which is still sort of very nascent territory. But it's one of my favorite topics, is the short of it. So I'm thrilled to have you here. I wanted to start by just maybe having you introduce yourself to people who aren't familiar, or even for people who are. I'd love to maybe get into kind of like how you've sort of transitioned from where you started with the type of content that you were producing to where you find yourself now.
Yeah, I'd always been interested in content, and I'd always realized just the power of making content on the internet. And I'd also came across AI in 2022 when I first tried Midjourney. And obviously, I was making content for about 2 years before I found Vibecoding. And so the origin of Vibecoding for me was Claude artifacts. That was the first thing in May of 2024. If you remember correctly, it was the first time where an AI company put in a code renderer into the platform. So previously, if you were non-technical, yes, you could get AI to generate code, but it's like, where do you put it? What does code do? Like, how do you even use code? But with Claude, you could say, create a cool website and make it a landing page for my business. And you would press enter, it would generate the code, and then it would open the artifact and render the front end code right there so you could see it. And that created a ton of people who had never had an experience with code. And I think that is the key, right? To have an experience with code, because that was like this massive onboard. They're like, oh my God, now I can do all of these different things. I can create websites, I can create components, animations, all these different things. And I'm the most curious person ever. And I think that's one of the reasons I've done well with content is like when I find something interesting, I go to the bottom of it. Like in a week, I learn 5 months worth of stuff in it because I'm so obsessed. And so immediately after Claude Artifacts came out, Amar Reshi, who was the head designer at 11 Labs until he just went to DeepMind, he posted this video where he took the code that he generated on Claude Artifacts and pasted it into Replit, which is one of the top vibe coding tools right now. And on this app, I could not only see the code being rendered, I could also deploy it to the internet very easily. And I could also set it up to AI APIs. So I could ask for a ChatGPT clone and then paste in my API key and tell the AI to create an app that allows me to chat with AI. And I did that. And basically the experiences and types of apps that I could create for myself started to increase more and more. And then I hit this natural ceiling because you can only go so far copying and pasting from Claude into Replit. And then that is when Cursor became really good. I think it took about 3 months after Claude 3.5 came out and went into Cursor. And then all of a sudden you could generate insane apps. And I was generating image generators. I made a Figma clone. And then I started making content about how I was doing this on X. And I think thousands of people were excited about it. And then I just started a community with no real plan. It was just a free community, and hundreds of people per day at the beginning were just submitting their vibe coding projects. At the time, we called it software composing. It wasn't until Andrej Karpathy renamed it to Vibecoding. We just called it software composing or AI coding. And yeah, I just kind of fell in love with it. And then I started building apps that I would put on the internet. Some of them made money. Some of them was just to help people. And some of them were just to have some fun on the internet.
No, it's awesome. How when as you were kind of diving in, what was the or and maybe I'll ask this in a way that's sort of broadly useful as well. How have the band of possible apps that can be created or sort of just web app, experiences that have been created expanded over the time that you've been in this space? So, coming up on a year, but maybe especially concentrated in the last 6 months.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think it's transitioning into more mobile. Mobile apps are inherently harder to build than web apps. And I think there's a lot more fun things you can do on a phone, such as haptics, such as immediate access to your camera roll. There's just inherent fun things. And I think the younger generation is just very mobile first. They spend more time on their phone. Some people only have a phone. They don't even really have a laptop. And so I think that is becoming more and more of a thing, especially as I've learned more about React Native and there's other tools out there now that create mobile apps. I think that's becoming a big thing. In terms of like general capability, we've seen with Gemini, the new Gemini 2.5 model, people are just succeeding at a higher rate to create the app that they have in their mind. People are now actually creating games, right? That wasn't really a popular thing until Claude 3.7 Sonnet, where if the games you were creating were like Flappy Bird. But now, as we've seen, we're seeing people without any coding experience at all, they're creating 3D, 3JS sailing games or flight simulator games or first-person shooter games that look like Minecraft. And this has kind of started this movement, and obviously Bolt created this $1 million hackathon event, and there's a lot of culture around it. And in my opinion, it feels like it's this big movement when you're on Twitter, but I don't think it's a global movement yet. I don't think it's even touched the masses yet because it's still unapproachable. And that's where I think the market opportunity is right now, is building the Canva for vibe coding, where you don't even think about the code. It's just intuitive. It actually like helps you. It gives you suggestions. It allows you to like very easily put your brand assets within apps, games, websites, that type of thing. And so that is the most exciting opportunity in this space that I see for me.
So I love this. And we're going to dig in more to sort of mobile specifically and some of the things that you're trying to build. I think that you're right that most people, even with this audience is obviously extremely enfranchised, and still probably the majority of these folks haven't tried one of these tools yet. And maybe they've tried to sort of do directly within Claude or ChatGPT some version of this, but haven't necessarily gone out and used a specific text to code type tool. What is the experience as it is right now for people? Like what do you do? How do you interact with it? And then where do you start to get stuck? Where are their bottlenecks? Where are their stops? And how does that constrain what people are building so far?
Yes. Okay. That's a really, really good question because a lot of people get stuck. To first answer your question, I think the best place to get started, honestly, is V0, v0.dev. I think it's the best place to start because it's the easiest to create something that is fun. And I think you should start with fun. The odds that you're going to turn your first app that you vibe code into a company that brings in any revenue is not the way you should approach this. You should tinker for like 2 or 3 months and actually really get used to the possibilities. And then you have a good idea of like what you can build. And then you should go from there, in my opinion. Just have fun. And if a business comes out of it, you're way more likely to find it along the way than you are to like plan it before you've ever tried it. That's the first thing. V0 now also allows you to upload images directly into the chat. So you can go to GPT-4o, for example, create a logo, and then ask GPT-4o to remove the background, and you can paste it directly into V0 and say, create a landing page and use this logo as for the website. You can also generate background gradients and say, use this as the background gradient. And then you can also upload sound effects, which I just made a video on that I'll be posting next week, where you can actually add 11 Labs sound effects and you can add your own music. And you can make it this like fun experience, which is what I originally thought made the web fun, was that it was kind of this personalized. Now there's like design rules and it's kind of boring. So just have fun with it to start. Where you are likely to get stuck is one, AI features and other APIs are when it gets a little bit harder. You're also likely to get stuck on authentication and database. If you want to create an app that users can sign into, and then also like on Twitter, if you make a post, that data has to be stored somewhere, and that's a database, right? And people get stuck there because it's like, which database do you use? Do you use Supabase, Firebase, something like InstantDB? There's a bunch of different options. And when you're faced with options and you're already in a space that you don't fully understand, like most vibe coders who are building only with AI, inherently don't know about programming. Therefore, how are they supposed to make a decision on which to use? And I think people get stuck there. The final one that I'll say is like Stripe integrations, where like adding payment options and then making sure that it's secure, and then also that people can't find savvy ways around your payment to like use your product without paying, and then just running into errors. And I think the deeper you go down the stack, which is like authentication, database, storage, and payments, the more likely you are to run into errors and therefore get fully stuck on your project. And so it's for that reason why I still think we're in a prototyping phase. I've seen people fully vibe code apps that make a ton of money. I've made a product myself that's made some money, but I still think the most effective way to do it, especially if you're working at a job, maybe you have some money saved up, is to use it as a prototype tool and use it to explain the exact app that you want, and then get someone to come in and help you finish it. I think we're going to move past that where anyone will be able to just build apps fully end to end. And that's why we're starting a company to solve that. And I think that's right around the corner. 6 months to 12 months, I think the models will get better to the point where they can do it. It might be expensive at first with just how much the models will have to like look at the entire code base. But yeah, that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, no, I think it's super, super interesting. So I definitely validate the prototyping as the low-hanging fruit and a good place to start, particularly if you're thinking about it kind of from a business context. So one of the shifts that we've made internal to Super Intelligent, and that I think is you're just going to see everywhere, is we effectively have a fairly hard ban at this point on feature write-ups or like, ideas for features that aren't just, prototyped somewhere, because like there's 2 layers of radical improvement by plugging it into Bolt or Lovable or whatever you're using to describe the feature. One is it's going to way more quickly clarify what you're actually trying to do for yourself, right? If you're thinking through it, you start with a really simple kind of very basic prompt and you see it manifest and you're like, oh, wait a second, that's not at all what I meant. You kind of have to refine it. You work with it. So you're refining what it is that you're trying to communicate to everyone else. And then second, when it comes time to actually communicate it to other people, you can just, it's the classic aphorism, a picture's worth 1,000 words, an app's worth 1,000 Slack messages, basically, right? Where people can just go see it themselves. We saw the Shopify AI memo say something similar around their product team. I actually think, ironically, one of the things I talk about with enterprises a lot is the fact that it is so good at prototyping, but still has limitations with other things. That actually is a hugely invitational thing potentially for enterprises who have real security concerns. They're not ready to just let these tools interact with their, legacy code bases yet. Let your people just start messing around with the prototyping kind of feature sharing place, because it's super low stakes. It's nothing that's ever seeing the light of day. You don't have to care about it from a sort of risk or compliance perspective because it's just internal. So it's, it could be a place where people are building muscles. So I think that that's right. I think that prototyping is a great place to start, although I do think it's incredibly small relative to where it's going to be in terms of the capabilities. The other piece that I wanted to sort of affirm and share something is the starting with fun. So I think that one of the things that actually quite frequently to me gets lost in discourse of AI, because it's so clearly revolutionizing how we work, is that the sort of immersion experience, or the experience that many of us have that kind of addicts us, is that it's really fun to create, right? It's really fun to feel like a wizard, right? I remember the first time I created, Midjourney images. There's like, Hemingway in Paris in the 1920s. You just feel like it's this totally like capital F fun kind of experience. And I hadn't had that for a long time until I started Vibecoding. And so, my project a couple of weekends ago was, I was thinking about, could I create some sort of like, Eldritch themed HP Lovecraft style, game that integrated tabletop gaming and role playing and card games and stuff. This was a Friday night. I was just kind of like wanted to basically zone out, but not all the way. And then I was like, well, I loved the experience of like the shitty old Oregon Trail when I was, in school, like the black on green screen version. So I was like, let's see if I could first like just create a version of Oregon Trail that is, but like, HP Lovecraft themed, and pulled up, I think Lovable was, I tried Lovable and Bolt. Lovable did a better job, so I was using Lovable for this. And over the course of like 2 hours, created this just fully working thing. I mean, it's ridiculous, but it's kind of fun. And it's that experience is like, I'm not going out and trying to monetize this now. It's just this like really fun thing that I could never have done before, that now end to end could actually do. And in the process, I think to your point, like learned a ton about how to actually use these tools, and what their capabilities are. So super agree with it. Just start by trying out fun things, because it's even more than some other types of AI, the capability to just do something that's awesome is very different.
Yes. And I think the reason why people's intuition, they're like, oh, why would you spend time making a game, but you're not like trying to make money on it? It seems counterintuitive because of how hard programming has been traditionally. Whereas if you think about what happened in the early 2000s with content, with video production in general, like I remember my dad, when I was a kid, had this massive video camera, and he would take videos of me as a kid. And if I asked him at the time, like, how are you going to edit that? He'd be like, what does that even mean? You don't know how to edit it. You don't know what software. He just pulls it out. It's a VHS tape, which whatever, I don't even know what that is really now. But my point is video production used to be a production. It used to be a thing only exclusive to people with the tools, the know-how to like edit a video. I don't even know what was Adobe around then. But like now we have these phones in our pocket that have CapCut. And now 13-year-olds know how to use CapCut. They can edit a video from their phone. Like they can edit a video while they're just watching TV on the couch in 10, 15 minutes. And they can post it on the internet, which is like this democratizing thing that and you can start a company. I literally did this, where I started a company based on me just pulling out a phone and talking to the camera on the internet. And so I think we're seeing this shift. I think it's like the CapCutification of software, where I don't know what the final form is, but I do know that it's getting significantly easier to create experiences with code. The same way that all of this software, the phone and CapCut, allowed you to create experiences with video, where like you didn't need funding, or you didn't need like all these checklist of items in order to create an experience with code. Anyone can create an experience with code. And so that's what I'm most focused on, is the experiences that you can create. And I think that the best content creators I know have this love for the game. They love creating vlogs because they love it. And they've created thousands of videos. They didn't even really intend to get views. They just kind of like learn the culture. They learn techniques for fun, for the sake of it. And I think having that mentality now, especially if you're young and like you want to do this for the long haul, I really think you should have this long-term perspective of like figuring out what the first platform for code, because it's coming. There's going to be many platforms to create experiences with code. It's just too fun and too easy. And so that's what I would pay attention to. It's like, how can you use, you don't need to create a SaaS company right away. Just create fun experiences for yourself, and then something will come of it. And that's what I've noticed in general right now in AI and in content. And all of the people that I've seen successful are always tinkering. They're experimenting, sometimes for no reason, and then you will be presented with the reason when an opportunity comes if you put yourself out there. Sorry if that's like a long-winded ramble, but like that's kind of a mentality that I have, and I think is good for the state of vibe coding, because no one really knows where it's going, honestly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that it actually, listening to you talk about that, I think it helps explain why this has captured your attention, because there is this continuity through line between there was a certain set of tools of creation. You liked creating things, so you gravitated towards the tools of creation that were available to you, which is content, videos, new platforms like TikTok, Instagram, right? Like that's where you were. But it probably wasn't because you saw your dad using video and you're like, I have to make videos. It's because that's what you could create. That's the expansionary creative opportunity has been in video and media. And now it's moving. And I think what you're on the vanguard of is it's moving to anything that you can build with code. That is the new creative canvas. That's the new creative template.
Yeah. And you know what? It's not like a new, to me, it's like the connective tissue between everything. And this will make sense. For example, so obviously we're trying to grow, and we've been successful so far in the month that we've created the Twitter account for the Vibecode app. We haven't launched the product yet, but we've grown to 10,000 followers. And I didn't even announce it to my audience until we were at 8,000. And what I did to grow it quickly was I created a script. I vibe coded an app that automatically put the screen recordings with an outline that looks like an iPhone. And that's how I've created those viral videos. And I've been able to vibe code a solution for myself to help me with marketing. And obviously, I've been making content on using ChatGPT, Midjourney, Runway, Kling, all these tools for all these different things. And code is just kind of the connective tissue between all of it, because now I can create video tools. I have a really good intuition on how these tools can interact with each other and what APIs are useful. For those of you who are untechnical, APIs are just like, I think of them as power-ups that you can use, technology that you can use. Like you can use the OpenAI API. So anything you can do on ChatGPT, you can fully emulate in a software. And a lot of these, what custom GPTs failed to do was create a good interface for the power-ups that is AI chat, right? Not everything is made for a chat interface. You need to create new interfaces, and you can do that. You can vibe code new interfaces. That makes writing more fun. That makes video editing more fun. Like you can literally make a custom video. Like if you have one specific type of video you make over and over again, you can make your own custom workflow for that. And so that's where I've seen all the value is as I become more entrepreneurial, starting my own company, I vibe code mini solutions for a lot of things. I think that is just like a super powerful thing that people have never had before in history. And it just connects all of this technology together. And you're able to vibe code that connection, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting. I think that most people who are deep on this would sort of bristle against the characterization of coding or agentic coding as like a use case for AI, because kind of what you just articulated is that use case as the thing that actually enables every other use case for AI, right? Is the thing that unlocks the sort of full potentiality of AI is to use your words, this connective tissue that comes in the form of coding, and vibe coding being the thing that unlocks it for a greater set of people rather than just the previous, kind of the set of people who had those skills before.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Agreed.
So let's talk about Vibecode specifically, the app that you guys are building. I know it's not out yet, but it feels to me like it's a combination of, there's a set of barriers that you guys ran into yourselves, that you ran into as you were building, that you wanted to try to address. But then also, I think a different kind of emphasis, potentially a different audience. The choice to go after mobile clearly is not just about, solving a problem. It's also about going out and seeking an opportunity. So talk a little bit more about kind of how you guys are thinking about Vibecode and that opportunity and what you're hoping to bring to market with it.
Yeah, I think you could say our spirit company is Canva. Like we want to create the Canva. The same way Canva created the design tool for the masses, we want to create the vibe code tool for the masses. And I think what Canva does extremely well is they make it very easy for anyone to make a design. And I think there's ways that they could actually make it easier, but the point is that vibe code, I think that the existing vibe coding tools are straddling the world of developers and the world of vibe coders. And I think for instance, Lovable announces a Supabase integration. No one knows what that means. Yes, on Twitter. And so they're kind of catering to their existing audience, which is developers who want to be more efficient. But what if you created a company where you only catered towards the masses and you focused only on serving people who are vibe coders? I think you can move significantly. You can move much faster. You can build solutions that solve 99% of problems instead of custom building your software for edge cases. You can use this database or this database. And then all of a sudden, all of your work as a code builder gets more complicated. That's one thing. But in terms of the use of product, I want to build an app that allows you to vibe code, and it will offer you suggestions when you need it. So to make it feel like your own vibe coded app, but always there to offer you suggestions, and it's very aware of the app that you're building. And we are starting with mobile apps because I don't think anyone has done it well. No one has made a good mobile app builder. And I think there's so many fun experiences you can create with a mobile app that you just can't quite get on web apps right now. And we will, and everything in the app is React Native. So you're going to, any app you make on mobile, it's very easy to get that on web as well. We just think the best entry point from a company perspective is mobile. And so we're starting with mobile, and it's really, really fun. The apps that, we spent all last night, just all we did was made apps for 3 hours and then just talked to our first wave of users, what are they making? How can we make the agent better at making these apps? And like, that's the phase that we're in. It's just like focus on making the product better. And that's like all I've been thinking about for the last, week and a half, 2 weeks.
That's awesome. Is there anything that you've created so far, just personally or seen created, that you just think is super fun and a good example of like a thing that wouldn't have been possible, or it was just isn't well suited to the web, but is amazing for mobile?
Yeah, I mean, there's a famous app out. Blake Anderson created it. It's Cal AI. And it's this app that allows you to pull out your phone, take a photo of like a Snickers bar, and it'll tell you the exact calories and it will add it to your daily calories in one click. And yeah, I created that in 4 prompts with the app, and like a highly designed, it worked after 1 prompt, and maybe it wasn't perfect with the API, but we were able to create an app like that was personalized for me. And other apps that people are creating, like one where you can like take a photo of someone and it roasts them. Some people are creating content workflows. Some people are, I think that is a huge thing for like productivity, is whenever you do a certain task, there's always questions you ask yourself as before you do them, or that is useful for context. And so I've seen a lot of people create apps that like, okay, I'm creating content, AI takes that in and then asks the user 3 questions. And then based on those answers, it gives you a clean output in your own tone of voice. You can very easily create voice apps, any apps that generate images. Going back to the API conversation, we want to give users credits so that they can actually use AI features without having to get API keys. And I think once they experience the power of using AI and APIs, then they'll be motivated to go get the API keys after. And so I think if we can allow users to use the ChatGPT API, GPT-4o image model, once it comes out, you can just show up and build design apps on the device. And I think that'll be super powerful.
One of my favorite small pieces of content from you was, I don't even know the dates exactly, but maybe a couple months ago, you tweeted, or X'd or whatever the hell we call it now, you tweeted, basically a Google search results comparison of prompt engineering versus vibe coding. And you were like, gonna come back and check on this in a year. And I think it was like 3 weeks later, like literally 3 weeks later or something like that, where the lines had actually crossed. And I think you updated it maybe a week or 2 ago, and it just had continued to sort of, vibe coding go to the stratosphere compared to prompt engineering.
Yeah, not even just prompt engineering. Look up vibe coding and prompting. Like just prompting, which is just like a more common term than prompt engineering, and it's vibe coding is past prompting. I just had the intuition though that this was going to be a massive trend. I did not think it would grow this fast, honestly.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. There's a whole separate like a PhD thesis to be written about the resonance of the term, that Andre introduced, which isn't even like, we've kind of taken it and used it in, I think, a slightly different way than he even intended with that original post. But there's something so resonant about the sort of vibe idea that even though he wasn't talking about just referring to people who don't code being able to code, it feels so invitational and accessible to people. It's very rare that a description of something hits that people so intuitively just latch onto that it works for them. But I think that's a piece of it. But anyways, the question that I had for you is, zooming out then, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months from now, how different do you think vibe coding looks? Let's call it 6 months and a year from now, as opposed to what it is now. And what do you think the biggest differences are?
So first of all, some things that I will make sure happen is that there are tools that make it 10 times more accessible. So those are the things that I can control, and make it more fun and more vibey, because I 100% agree with what you said about the approachable nature of this term vibe coding. I think there's something about the word vibe that is really resonant. I think it's the word of the decade, if I'm being honest. Like something about the word vibes. I don't think it's something I heard like growing up in like junior high, like in the, early 2010s. And for some reason, there's something very resonant about the word vibe. In general, I think everything is based on vibes, like just like the way people create content, people latch onto people's vibe on social media. I don't know, there's something, we could talk about that forever. That's the first thing. And so, yeah, I want to make vibe coding more vibey. And that means reducing errors. And that also means making it more fun and making it more intuitive and making it like a collaborative process with what feels like your friend, like you and a buddy, which is an AI building an app. And I think that is ideally the end state of the Vibecode app is just like the best AI agent for anyone to create apps and have fun creating apps, or experiences with code is what I call it. So that's what I can control. The other things that I think other companies are going to do is just, without the obvious answer of like, these models will get better, Cursor will obviously get better, Windsurf will get better. I think that we're coming up on a time where I think we're going to see some advantages of scale. Like, I think there's going to be prompts that you can run that cost $100, which basically look at your entire code base, look for bugs, and iteratively debug your app. I think Manus was a huge eye-opener for me to see how long an AI agent could work and have like kind of an overall understanding of the full mission. And so I think the longer those loops get, and Andrew Yang actually retweeted a post a few weeks ago talking about how like every period of time, the length of time that AI agents can work is increasing. And so I think we're going to see super long task AI agents in the coding space you're going to be able to accomplish a lot more and do a lot of the things that the vibe coding cynics say you're not going to be able to do, like get rid of bugs or do proper security rules. Because at the end of the day, they are deterministic lists. There is a list of things you should do to make your software secure. And I see zero evidence that AI won't be able to do that. I think the issue is context, which we're seeing get solved, and also just like macro understanding of a larger task, which we're seeing being solved. And so I think companies, it's going to be a no-brainer to spend $100, $200 on a single task you give an AI. And so I think we might see, we'll call it the Devin shift, because Devin obviously it feels like a longer workflow. And I think that'll be a massive thing.
Awesome. No, this is so fun. Let's make sure to come back in 6 months or 12 months or whatever it is to check in on some of this. In the meantime, for people who want to follow along, who want to check out Vibecode, where can they find you or the app?
Yeah. So on X, Vibecode app. If you want to go to our website, right now we have early access. So vibecodeapp.com. We had way more demand than we anticipated, which is why it's been longer for us to roll it out to more test users, because we had thousands of signups, but we are trying to get it out as quickly as possible. If you want to follow me, I don't even know what platform I would say I am most myself on X. That's where I don't even think before I post. That is my notes taking app and where I post my thoughts as soon as I have them. So follow me on X. It's RileyBrown_AI. And if you want to watch my videos, you can find me on YouTube as well.
Awesome. All right, Riley. Well, thanks so much for hanging out today. Love the work. I'm glad you're doing this, and can't wait to see what you guys build.
Appreciate it. This is awesome. Thank you.